A nanny cam for the dog showed my husband leaving every day for 8 months. He was not at work. He was at a casino. Reddit most disturbing stories. I installed a nanny cam and discovered my husband had been lying about working from home for 8 months. My name is Jessica. I am 37 years old. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And 10 months ago I installed a nanny cam in my living room because our dog had been destroying things while we were out, and I wanted to understand the pattern. What I found instead was that my husband had not been working from home on the days he said he was working from home for the previous 8 months. He had been leaving the house within 20 minutes of my departure every single day, and returning approximately 40 minutes before I came home, and sitting at his desk with his laptop open, so that when I arrived it appeared he had been there all day. 8 months. I had asked him about his workday regularly, and he had described meetings and projects and deadlines with the specificity of someone who had done those things. He had not done those things. He had been somewhere else. My husband's name is David. We had been married for 7 years and had a 5-year-old son named Oliver, and a life that I had believed was transparent in the ways that mattered. David worked remotely for a software company. He had been remote for 3 years, and it had never occurred to me to question the basic fact of his presence at home, because why would it? The nanny cam footage showed me 7 weeks of days in which David left our house at approximately 8:45 a.m. and returned at approximately 5:20 p.m., and the footage from his desk during those hours showed an empty chair. I watched 1 week of footage before I said anything. I needed to be certain, and I needed to think about what I was going to do with certain. I called my attorney on a Thursday morning. Her name is Patricia, and she told me to document everything and to check our finances before confronting David, because the question of where he had been for 8 months might have a financial dimension I needed to understand before the conversation. I spent 4 days looking at our finances. What I found was a pattern of cash withdrawals, not enormous individually, between $200 and $400, made on the days David had been absent, that over 8 months totaled approximately $14,000. I did not know what the $14,000 had been for. I confronted David on a Monday evening after Oliver was asleep. I showed him the footage from one day. He went white. I asked him where he had been. He told me in the specific, careful way of someone who has decided that partial truth is the only available exit from a complete lie. He told me he had been struggling with a gambling problem for 2 years. The cash withdrawals had been money he had taken to a casino approximately 40 minutes from our house. The days he had been absent had been days he had spent gambling rather than working. He had been working at night, catching up on his actual job from approximately 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. on most days, which was why his professional performance had not raised flags with his employer. He had been lying to me about his days and hiding a gambling addiction that had cost us $14,000. And that he had been managing alone for 2 years. The confrontation that followed was one of the most difficult evenings of our marriage. I had prepared for an affair and had found something different. Not better, not worse, different. An addiction is not a choice in the same way, but the 8 months of daily deception was a choice, and the $14,000 was a choice, and the nights at the casino while I was asleep upstairs were choices. And I needed to hold all of those things simultaneously, while also holding the person I had been married to for 7 years. David entered a treatment program the following week. He is in his 10th month of treatment. We are in couples therapy. He has not been to a casino since the conversation. Our finances are now managed jointly with full transparency. We had a financial advisor help us restructure everything so that large cash movements require both of us to authorize them. I cannot tell you that we are fine because fine would not be accurate. I can tell you that we are honest in a way we were not before, and that the honesty is real, and that David is doing the work, and that I am watching him do it, and deciding what that means for us one day at a time. Update 4 months later. David received a chip from his treatment program last month. 10 months of sobriety. He brought it home and put it on the kitchen table, and I looked at it for a long time. Oliver picked it up and asked what it was. David told him it was something you get when you work hard at something difficult for a long time. Oliver turned it over in his hands and then handed it back and said, "Good job, Dad," and went back to his toys. David looked at me across the table. I looked at him. I put my hand on his hand for a moment. That was all. Sometimes that is enough. Story 2. AITA. My mother-in-law threw away my wedding dress while I was on my honeymoon and replaced it with hers. My name is Lauren. I am 32 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and 18 months ago I returned from my honeymoon to discover that my mother-in-law had entered our home while we were away, removed my wedding dress from the closet where I had stored it, and hung her own wedding dress in its place with a note that said she thought I would want to preserve it alongside a family heirloom. My wedding dress was not in our home. It was not in her home. It was not anywhere I could find it for 3 days until a neighbor told me she had seen Linda putting bags in the dumpster at the end of our street the morning after our wedding. The dress was gone. Week. He is in his 10th month of treatment. We are in couples therapy. He has not been to a casino since the conversation. Our finances are now managed jointly with full transparency. We had a financial advisor help us restructure everything so that large cash movements require both of us to authorize them. I cannot tell you that we are fine because fine would not be accurate. I can tell you that we are honest in a way we were not before, and that the honesty is real, and that David is doing the work, and that I am watching him do it, and deciding what that means for us one day at a time. Update 4 months later. David received a chip from his treatment program last month. 10 months of sobriety. He brought it home and put it on the kitchen table, and I looked at it for a long time. Oliver picked it up and asked what it was. David told him it was something you get when you work hard at something difficult for a long time. Oliver turned it over in his hands and then handed it back and said, "Good job, Dad," and went back to his toys. David looked at me across the table. I looked at him. I put my hand on his hand for a moment. That was all. Sometimes that is enough. Story 2. AITA. My mother-in-law threw away my wedding dress while I was on my honeymoon and replaced it with hers. My name is Lauren. I am 32 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and 18 months ago I returned from my honeymoon to discover that my mother-in-law had entered our home while we were away, removed my wedding dress from the closet where I had stored it, and hung her own wedding dress in its place with a note that said she thought I would want to preserve it alongside a family heirloom. My wedding dress was not in our home. It was not in her home. It was not anywhere I could find it for 3 days until a neighbor told me she had seen Linda putting bags in the dumpster at the end of our street the morning after our wedding. The dress was gone. My husband's name is Ryan, and we had been married for 11 days when I found out what his mother had done. Linda is 61 years old, and she has always had opinions about how things in her son's life should be arranged, and she had expressed those opinions about our wedding in various ways that I had managed with the patience of someone who understood that the wedding was one day and the marriage was the rest of our lives. I had not anticipated that managing Linda would extend to the week after the wedding while we were in Hawaii. The note she had left with her dress said she had wanted us to have it as a family keepsake, and that she hoped I would understand the sentiment. I sat in my bedroom holding her note and looking at her dress hanging in my closet, and I understood the sentiment in a way I did not think she had intended. Ryan called Linda. The conversation I could hear from the kitchen was one of the more remarkable I have witnessed in our relationship. Ryan asking his mother directly whether she had thrown away my wedding dress, and Linda explaining that she had moved it because she felt the closet needed to be organized for our return, and that she had not realized I would want to keep it, and Ryan's voice going through several distinct changes as he processed what he was hearing. Linda's position was that she had not known I wanted to keep the dress, my wedding dress, that I had worn 11 days earlier, that she had removed from my home without asking while I was on my honeymoon. She had not known I would want to keep it. I am going to pause on that for a moment. Ryan drove to his mother's house that evening. I did not go. I sat in our home with her dress still hanging in my closet, and I thought about what it meant that my mother-in-law had walked into my home with a key Ryan had given her years before we married, and had made a decision about my belongings in the 10 days I was away and had not thought to call us and check. Ryan spent 2 hours at his mother's house. When he came home, he told me that Linda had cried and had said she had only been trying to help, and that she had not understood, and that she was sorry. He also told me she had confirmed the dress had been in bags in the dumpster, which had been collected the previous Thursday. The dress was gone. Ryan took Linda's key from her that evening. She has not had a key to our home since. We had the locks changed the following week, not because we believed Linda would come in again, but because changing them was something I needed to do for my own sense of the space. Ryan and I had the most honest conversation about Linda that we had ever had in the 3 years we had been together. He told me things about his mother and his understanding of her behavior that he had been holding because he had not wanted to speak critically of her to me. I told him things I had been managing quietly that I had not said because I had not wanted to create conflict. We said all of it, and it was difficult, and it was the beginning of a different way of handling things than we had been using. Linda called me directly 6 weeks later. She said she had been thinking about what she had done, and that she understood now that she had crossed a serious line, and that she was sorry in terms that did not include the word if, and that did not include the phrase I was only trying to help. I told her I appreciated that. I told her I needed her to understand that our home was our space, and that it required an invitation, and she said she understood. Ryan's mother and I have a relationship that is careful and improving. She has not entered our home without an invitation since. For our first anniversary, Ryan had a portrait made from our wedding photographs, a large one, framed, hung in our living room. The first time Linda saw it, she looked at it for a long time. And then she said that I had been a beautiful bride. I told her thank you, and I meant it in a limited and specific way that I thought was adequate for where we were. Update, 3 months later. Linda asked me last month if I had ever thought about preserving a wedding photo in a keepsake box. I looked at her for a moment. Then I understood that she was trying, in her specific and sometimes misaligned way, to offer something she had taken without asking. I told her I had thought about it, and had not gotten around to it. She said she had found a company that did beautiful work and would I like her to look into it. I said yes. She sent me 3 options the following week. I chose one. It arrives next month. It is not my wedding dress. It is something else, and I am choosing to receive it as what she intends rather than what she cannot undo. Story 3. Sue's Reddit stories. My husband came back after being missing for 3 years, and had no memory of our marriage or our children. My name is Catherine. I am 39 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, and 2 years ago my husband walked into a police station in a city 400 miles away, and said he did not know who he was. He had been missing for 3 years. My husband's name is Thomas. He disappeared on a Tuesday morning in October 3 years before he walked into that police station. He had left for work at his normal time and had not arrived and had not called and had not come home. His car was found parked at a rest stop on the highway 40 miles from our home with his wallet and his phone inside it. There had been no accident, no evidence of crime at the scene, no explanation that the investigation was able to produce in the 3 years of its ongoing status. I had spent 3 years as a woman whose husband had vanished, not divorced, not widowed, not anything with a clean name. I had 2 children who had been 7 and 5 when Thomas left, and who were 10 and 8 when the police station call came. I had built a life in those 3 years that was entirely about survival and management, and getting through the next thing, and I had done it. And I had done it without understanding what had happened or why, or whether Thomas was alive somewhere in the world. He was alive. He had been living for 3 years under the name he had given himself when he could not remember his real one. A name he had taken from a street sign in the city, where he had apparently arrived with no identification, and no memory of anything that preceded his arrival. He had worked, rented a room, built a small life. He had not known he had a family. When his fingerprints were run through the system after he presented at the police station, they matched his file, and the call came to the detective who had handled his disappearance case, and then came to me. I want to tell you what it is like to receive a phone call telling you that your missing husband has been found alive with no memory of you or your children, because I have not found language adequate for it, and I am going to try anyway. It is not relief in any simple sense. It is a specific complicated thing that contains relief and grief, and a disorientation that does not have a name because the situation that produces it does not have a name. Thomas had what his doctors determined was a dissociative fugue state, a rare and real condition in which a person loses autobiographical memory and establishes a new identity, typically following a period of extreme stress. The stress in Thomas's case had a source that his doctors and therapists identified over months of treatment. A combination of factors including a mental health history he had not shared with me, and a period of professional and personal pressure that had been building for years without adequate support. Thomas had not left us deliberately. He had not chosen to disappear. His mind had done something that medicine recognizes, and that I had never heard of before the phone call, and that I spent weeks reading about after it. What Thomas also did not have was memory of us. Not suppressed memory, absent memory. He did not know my face. He did not know our children's names. He did not know our house or our history or the 11 years of marriage that had preceded his disappearance. He was a man I knew completely who did not know me at all, and I am not able to tell you what that is like except to say that it is one of the stranger forms of grief I have experienced because the person is present and gone simultaneously. I did not know what to do. Nobody had a protocol for this. I spoke to 3 therapists, 2 attorneys, and a medical specialist before I had enough information to make any decisions. Thomas and I met, formally, in a therapeutic setting, introduced by his treatment team, 4 months after the phone call. He sat across from me and he was Thomas in every physical sense, and he was a stranger in every other sense, and I sat with that for the hour of that first meeting and drove home, and sat in my car in my driveway for a long time. Our children met him 6 months after that first meeting. Those meetings were handled by a family therapist with specific experience in reunification, and they were the most carefully managed difficult hours of our lives. I am not going to tell you how Thomas and I resolved this because we have not fully resolved it yet, and I think honest stories require honest endings even when honest endings are incomplete. Thomas's memory of our life has not returned. Some fragments have, a song, a smell, a sense of familiarity at certain moments that his therapist says may be emotional memory rather than episodic memory. He knows who we are now because he has been told and has learned us again. Whether that is the same as remembering us I cannot answer, and neither can his doctors. We are not living together. We are in contact. Our children have a relationship with their father that is being rebuilt slowly and carefully, and with therapeutic support, and that is real even if it is different from what it was. I go to bed in my own house every night, and I think about the Tuesday morning he left for work and about the 3 years and about the police station, and about the man who sat across from me in a therapist's office and did not know my face, and I do not know what the future holds, and I have decided that not knowing is something I can live with because I have already lived with not knowing for 3 years and I am still here. Update: 5 months later. Thomas remembered something last month. Not a recovered memory in a dramatic sense, a small specific thing. He called me and said he had been making coffee that morning, and had done something specific with the coffee that he had not done before, and had understood in the moment that he had done it before, somewhere, with someone. He said he had stood in his kitchen for a long time trying to follow the thread, and had not been able to. He said he had called me because calling me felt right even though he could not explain why it felt right. I sat on the phone with him for a long time after he said that. I did not say anything for a while. Then I told him I was glad he had called. He said he was glad too. We talked for an hour about ordinary things. When we hung up I sat in my kitchen, and I cried for the first time in months. Not from grief exactly, from something I do not have a name for that was not entirely sad and not entirely not sad, and that was the most honest thing I had felt in a long time. Story 4. Reddit relationship stories. I left my husband after 14 years because of something he said at a dinner party, and I have never regretted it. My name is Diane. I am 46 years old, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and 12 years ago I left my husband of 14 years because of something he said at a dinner party that was small enough to be dismissed and large enough that I have not been able to dismiss it in the 12 years since. My husband's name was Robert. We had been together since I was 20 and had been married since I was 24. And I had spent 14 years building a life that looked from the outside like everything I had wanted. Robert was professionally successful, socially charming, the kind of husband who was easy to be married to in public and more difficult to be married to in private in ways that I had been normalizing for so long that I had lost the ability to see them clearly. The dinner party was at a friend's house. 8 people around a table, good food, the kind of evening that is easy and warm. Someone asked me about a project I had been working on. I was building a small business at the time, a landscape design company that I had been developing for 2 years, and that I was genuinely proud of. I began to answer. Robert interrupted me. This was not unusual. Robert interrupted me regularly in social settings in a way I had long since stopped registering as anything other than his conversational style. What was different about this particular interruption was what he said. He told the table a version of my project that was smaller and less serious than the version I had been about to describe. He used a diminutive. He called it my little project. My little project. In front of 8 people. With a tone that was light and affectionate on the surface, and that contained underneath it a very clear communication about how he thought about what I was building. I did not say anything at the dinner. I finished my wine. I talked to other people. I drove home next to Robert, and we went to bed, and the next morning I sat at my kitchen table, and I thought about my little project, and I thought about 14 years of small moments that I had been normalizing, and I understood for the first time with the specific clarity that sometimes arrives without warning that I was not going to normalize them for 14 more. I told Robert the first wanted a divorce 2 weeks after the dinner party. He was genuinely surprised. He had not seen it coming because he had not been paying attention to what I had been accumulating, and I had not told him because I had not known I was accumulating it until that dinner party made the accumulation suddenly visible. Robert said it was about more than one phrase at a dinner party. I told him he was right, and that the phrase at the dinner party had been the moment I understood what the more than was. He asked for couples therapy. I said I did not want couples therapy. He asked what he could do. I told him he could not do anything and that I was not leaving because of what he could do differently, but because of what I understood about what I needed that our marriage had not been providing, and that I did not believe could be built in what remained. The divorce took 8 months. We had no children. The business I had been building, my little project, is now in its 12th year and employs 14 people, and I think about Robert's phrase every time I sign a paycheck. Not with bitterness, with a specific private gratitude for a moment of accidental clarity that arrived at a dinner party, and that I was awake enough to receive. Update: 4 months later. My company won a regional design award last month. There was a ceremony and I stood at a podium and thanked my team. And I thought about the dinner party and about Robert, and about the word little, and I felt something that was entirely satisfaction and nothing else. A colleague asked me afterward what I had been smiling about during my thank you speech. I told her I had been thinking about something someone had said to me a long time ago that had turned out to be useful in ways he had not intended. She said that sounded like a story. I said it was. She said she wanted to hear it sometime. I said maybe someday I would tell it. Story 5. Reddit most disturbing stories. My coworker was living a double life. She had a husband and children in 2 different cities and both families thought she traveled for work. My name is Sandra. I am 41 years old, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 14 months ago I found out that a coworker I had worked alongside for 4 years had been maintaining 2 complete family lives in 2 different cities, and that the business travel she had described to both families as the reason for her absences was a fiction that had been the structural support of an arrangement she had sustained for 7 years. Her name is Michelle. We had worked together at a healthcare consulting firm, and had been friendly in the specific way of colleagues who share an office and a coffee machine and occasional lunch, and who know enough about each other's lives to ask follow-up questions, but not enough to see the full picture. Michelle had told me about her husband Paul in Phoenix and her 2 sons aged 9 and 7. She had mentioned travel frequently, and had occasionally seemed tired in the way of people who spend a significant portion of their lives in airports. I had not questioned any of this because there was nothing to question in what she had shown me. I found out because of a coincidence that I still find difficult to fully believe. My sister lives in Dallas. My sister has a neighbor named Karen. Karen's husband works with a man whose wife had recently left him under circumstances that had become known in their social circle. Karen mentioned the circumstances to my sister in passing, because they were remarkable. My sister mentioned them to me, because she thought the story was extraordinary. The wife who had left Karen's neighbor's friend was named Michelle. She had been discovered to have a second family in Phoenix. Her husband in Dallas, a man named James, had found out through a piece of mail that had been delivered to their house in error, that contained documentation of a lease in Phoenix in Michelle's name at an address James did not recognize. The timeline of what followed involved James hiring a private investigator, and the private investigator producing documentation of a life in Phoenix that included a husband named Paul, 2 children, a mortgage, a social circle, and 7 years of constructed reality. I sat on my phone after my sister's call, and I thought about Michelle, about 4 years of coffee and lunch conversation and follow-up questions, And I thought about Paul and James and 4 children in 2 cities who had no idea, and I sat with the specific vertigo of understanding that someone you thought you knew had been someone else entirely for the entire duration of your knowing them. I did not know what to do with what I knew. I called my attorney. I seem to call my attorney with some regularity in my life, which tells you something about the situations I encounter. And she told me that I had no legal obligation to disclose what I knew to any of the parties, but that I might have a professional one if my company's code of conduct had provisions relevant to employee conduct. I reviewed the code of conduct. It did not have a specific provision for bigamy, but it had provisions about conduct that created legal liability, and I flagged the situation to HR without identifying myself initially. HR conducted their own review and determined that Michelle's employment situation had been compromised by her legal situation. She had been using company resources, including her work travel account, to facilitate movements between cities, and she was placed on administrative leave and subsequently separated from the company. The legal situation between Paul, James, and Michelle is ongoing and is not mine to detail. What I know is that both families exist and that both husbands are managing something that has no clean precedent, and that the children in both cities are being managed through with appropriate therapeutic support according to what has reached me through the chain of connection that brought the story to me in the first place. I think about Michelle sometimes when I am at the coffee machine that we used to stand at together. I think about the tiredness I attributed to travel. I think about the follow-up questions I asked about Paul and the boys and the answers she gave me and how completely constructed they were, and how completely I had received them. And I think about what it means to know someone at work and how thin that knowing is and how much can be happening inside a thin knowing that you would never think to look for. Update: 3 months later. I ran into Paul at a grocery store 2 months ago. He recognized me from a company event I had attended years ago, where Michelle had introduced us briefly. He looked tired in a way that was different from the tiredness I had attributed to travel in Michelle. He said hello and I said hello, and we stood in an aisle for a moment. And I said I was sorry for what he was going through, and he said thank you, and there was nothing else adequate to say, so we said nothing else and went our separate ways. I stood in the cereal aisle for a moment after he walked away, and I thought about 7 years in 2 cities and 4 children, and I thought about the coffee machine and the follow-up questions, and I pushed my cart forward because there was nothing else to do and forward was the only direction available.